Hi, guys, and welcome back to English with Dry. Today I'm taking you on a little walkthrough of AQA English Language Paper 2, Section A. The Section A is called the reading section. Now, that means that you are going to be given two sources in Language Paper 2, Source A, and you guessed it, Source B. These will always be non-fiction and usually from two pretty different time periods or eras. For instance, one is often contemporary and one is often from the 19th century. They'll be on a linked topic or theme, but they will show two different perspectives on this theme. Now, that is the real purpose of the paper, for you to be able to talk effectively and in detail about how writers from different eras with different perspectives on things are able to show their ideas about the same topic. Okay, so the first thing we need to talk about is how long we're going to spend doing Section A. The whole exam is, of course, 1 hour and 45 minutes. Section A, you are going to be spending an hour on. The Section A and B are both worth 40 marks. However, Section A is going to take you a bit longer to do. To begin with, you're going to read the sources. Now, this should take you 15 minutes. This is an important step that should not be rushed. I know it's tempting to press on with actually writing the answers. However, you will not do that well if you don't read them beforehand. So for this 15 minutes, you'll be reading both source A and B slowly and carefully, and you'll need a highlighter to go through anything that's either a keyword or phrase. Make sure particularly you are paying attention to what the writer's opinions are at each given point of both sources. Question 1 is the true or false question. You're going to spend no more than 4 minutes on it. You're going to reread the section of the source it tells you to. You will be specifically guided towards a certain section of lines, for example, 1 to 10. You'll be given 8 statements, and it'll be up to you to decide which 4 are true and which 4 are false. Question number 2, this one is worth 8 marks, so you're going to spend between 8 and 10 minutes doing it. This question asks you to write a summary of either the differences or the similarities between the sources, depending on what the question tells you. Usually, it will talk about differences. However, it's not impossible that the exam or paper you will sit will be about similarities, so you must look out carefully for what it says. This question should not have any analysis of language, so no petal writing or peel or whatever you might call it. You are simply summarising what each person says and making inferences based on both of them. Question 3 is 12 marks, and so you will spend between 12 and 14 minutes doing it. Again, you're going to be given a specific source, so A or B, to look at. And if you include quotes from outside of this part, i.e. the line section that you are told to look at, you will not receive any marks for what you write about them. So it's important that you look closely at what you've been asked to write about. This question asks you to analyze the effects of the writer's choice of language on the reader. So this is one where you'll be talking about language techniques and methods and structural devices and the effect of keywords and phrases and how they create meaning. The final question, question 4, is worth 16 marks. Now, this is a bit of a mixed question in that it's a kind of coming together of questions 2 and 3. You're going to spend between 16 and 18 minutes on it, and you must refer to the whole of both source A and B. You cannot get full marks if you don't refer to both sources in their entirety. You need to compare the writer's different views or opinions and analyze how they differently present these opinions. So this means, again, looking at methods. This is, again, petal or analytical writing, and that is how you answer the fourth one. So I'm going to go through each one in a bit more detail now, and I'm going to give you some writing frames for looking at them. But firstly, just a note on reading the sources. There's usually going to be a glossary for words that you may not know. Now, this will specifically be in the source that may be from the 19th century, because it's more likely that that will contain more obscure or old-fashioned vocabulary. Look out for little numbers next to words, or footnotes as we call them, because that will indicate that there is a definition waiting for you at the end of the source or the bottom of the page. It might even be worth you highlighting these words so that you're aware of where they are, so you can more easily refer to the glossary. For the questions that tell you to only look at specific sections, so question number 1 and question number 3, it's helpful to draw a bracket around these parts. So for instance, if it says lines 1 to 10, you look for the line numbers 1 to 10 and you draw or highlight a bracket around this. Now that will help you to visually not look for something that's outside of them, and thereby you will not risk writing something that will not be credited with marks. Just as a quick reminder, the title line and maybe the subtitle of the source is not included in the line numbers. Make sure you count from 0 or from 1 rather to see where they start. Finally, the paper is all about writers' opinions and perspectives. It's a good idea to try and track the mood or the views of each writer across both of the sources. Now, to do this, a good exercise is writing a single word next to each paragraph that summarizes the mood in that paragraph. So, for example, if you are getting the sense to begin with that the writer is frustrated by the topic, you might write frustrated next to that paragraph. Or if by the end they have reached some sort of resolution, you might write contented. This will just make question 4 especially a bit easier. Okay, tips for question 1, the true or false. This is what it looks like. Now, I've taken the 2 sources at the start and then these examples from an actual paper. If you stay tuned for more videos, you will see me going through that specific paper, and I will make them of the paper itself available on a Dropbox that I'll put the link for in the description below. So you can see here it says read again source A. So that means source B straight away is not important for this one. Choose 4 statements below which are true. Now you will then have a list of the 8 and you must choose a maximum of 4. And clearly that is 4 marks worth. Now, some tips. There will only ever be a maximum of 4 true statements. They're not going to mix it up so that it's 3 and 5 or 2 and 6. So what you can use is the process of elimination if you get stuck. If you know for a fact that 1 is false, A is false, B is true, C is false, but you can't work out D, leave it, because it might be that you can then work out E, F, G, and H without any difficulty, and then that will tell you what C is without even having to look for it. It's helpful as well to try and find exactly in the source where the true statements are. This way it will cause you to read them more closely, but also you'll be able to check your work. Maybe highlight the specific statement just so you know where it is. Now, as a warning, there will always be at least one that tries to trip you up, one that will either be very close to being a true statement, but actually will technically be false, or something of that nature. This is why you must read it very, very carefully. The chances are that if the statement sounds untrue, it may be, but that's not a guarantee. So you have to actually find where it says it in the text if you are going to say that it is true. However, this question, in general, is one that you should be targeting 4 out of 4 on. There are 4 easy free marks, really, compared to the rest, and you should be doing it in no more than 4 minutes. Question number 2, a summary of the differences. Now, this is a question that is often not done very well. It's worth 8 marks, so it doesn't seem like it's all that important. But if you do this properly, it will set you up for question 4 quite well. You need to refer to both sources in order to do this question, because it is a summary of the differences. As I mentioned before, it may be similarities, but more often than not, it will be about how they differ. You need to use details from both of the sources to write a summary of the differences, the pressures placed on young women. Now that refers to the specific paper I'm going to be looking at in future videos. Now, on the right here is a writing frame. Firstly, the writer of source A discusses, the quotation suggests, furthermore from this we can infer. On the other hand, the writer of source B says, they write, this tells the reader, therefore the 2 texts differ as they. Now, that would be one paragraph that we're looking at up there. There's no structure marks for writing in section A, so it's not like if you write a long, sprawling paragraph that you are going to lose anything. What you need to make sure you are doing in this question is not analysing the effect of language. You do not need to say things like the key word has connotations of, and then go on talking about it in that way. You should not be identifying similes, metaphors, or personifications. That is for questions 3 and 4. If you do any of that, you will not be awarded with any marks. What you need to do is you need to summarize actually what's going on, and then you need to make an inference based on it. Inference, of course, is when you read between the lines of something, when you actually are able to work out what somebody means that they're saying beyond simply the words they use. For instance, I always talk to students about how if a teacher says, oh, thank you for being here on time, in that tone, that they genuinely mean it. Whereas if they say, thank you for being on time, then the chances are they're being sarcastic and they don't mean it. But the inference you're making there is the difference between those two tones, and that's what you need to do in this question. In order to get the higher marks, you need to make inferences about both of them, i.e., what is the writer really saying? That is why there is the bullet point directing you, furthermore, from this we can infer ... This is a reminder that you have to do it for each source. You, of course, need to use quotes properly too from both sources, and that is also indicated in the writing frame. You can see there at the end, therefore the two texts differ as they ... This is encouraging you to write a brief summary at the end of each paragraph, something that will just solidify your answer. Now, as you can see, it says ×2 summary and inference paragraphs, so that means that I would expect you to be writing 2 paragraphs that contain all of this. I hope that that is quite a clear way of doing it. In a later video, I will show you examples in more depth, though. All right, question 3. How does the writer use language? Again, you'll be given a set source. So in this question, it's source A and a set group of lines, 23 to 31. As I said before, it's a good idea now to write a bracket around them. You will notice the question nearly always says, how does the author use language? And then you'll be given a specific focus. So to present fears over not being allowed to use her phone. So that would be the focus of what you're writing. Again, a frame. Now, this one, as we said, is language analysis. So you are looking for similes, metaphors, personifications. You're looking for any linguistic or structural device you can, and you are needing to talk about the effect these have on the reader. So, overall, this article engages the reader in the topic through its ... tone and through the use of ... name technique. In line ... the writer uses a name technique when they say, and then you would use your quote. This is effective because, and then this is when you would have your analysis. Furthermore, the writer's choice of, and then a specific word, draws us into the topic as it has connotations of. This is effective because. Now, you will notice there that what I'm doing is asking you to zoom in on key individual word choices. Now, that is a really easy and effective way to analyze methods properly. By talking about connotations of words, you can show an in-depth understanding of what writers are trying to say. It's a simple way of doing it, and it means you don't always have to worry about knowing the names of things properly. On that, you will never get extra marks simply for saying this is a verb, this is an adjective. So if you don't know which is which in the case of the quote you're using, then don't say it. It will not matter in the slightest, I promise you. As you can see, I'm suggesting that you do 3 paragraphs of this type. So if you're used to calling them such things, they're essentially 3 petal or peel paragraphs. This is worth 12 marks, and so therefore that is why the three different paragraphs is what I'm suggesting. Okay, finally, on to question 4, compare the writer's views. Now, this question is, as I said, a kind of mixture of questions 2 and 3. It encourages you to compare both, but also analyze the writer's methods. But specifically, it's asking you to analyze how the writers get across their different viewpoints and ideas on the issues of the paper. So the one we're going to look at is the use of the topic is social interaction in young women. So that would be the thing you are asked to talk about the writer's opinions on. Now, that is why I have encouraged you, as you've read the sources in the first place, to keep a note of the opinions of the writers as you move through it. Because this way it will help you to actually say, well, I think that the writer of source A thinks this, whereas the writer of source B thinks that. In your answer, you could compare their different views, compare the methods they use to convey those views and experiences, and to support your ideas with references to both texts. Now, for those 16 marks, it's weird that it says you could do these things, because that's exactly what you have to do. So again, I've got a writing frame for you. And again, this is for 1 paragraph that you would use 3 times. Now, if that seems messy to you, you can split them up into different paragraphs. It doesn't really matter. I'm just saying that you might do it all in one, because then it will be clear to you what you've already said. Now, again, as I've said, you need to do it 3 times. That does not guarantee that you'll get full marks by writing that much. And if you write less, it doesn't guarantee that you won't get full marks. It's just my suggestion for what feels like enough. What you should go on more is the time that we have agreed on that you have allocating to each question. So if you think, oh, I've only done a paragraph and a half, but I've been doing this for 20 minutes, then it's time to move on. You can always make up at the end, but section B is something that you should not leave too little time to do. So the writing frame here encourages you to start off with a kind of summary sentence. The 2 texts convey different attitudes towards, and then you would discuss the topic. Almost like a little point sentence to get you going. In source A, the writer feels, thinks, believes. Now you'll notice there that all of those verbs I've picked are ones that indicate the writer's actual opinion. That is just a simple way of reminding you to answer the question properly. We see this through their use of technique when they say quotation. The use of technique creates the impression that keyword is effective because it connotes this shows the writer's feelings, stroke thoughts, strokes ideas of. Now it's the same usual process of language or method analysis, petal paragraph stuff there. Now my students like to call these etal paragraphs because you would then do the exact same thing about source B. Whatever works for you, but that is essentially what you are doing, analyzing the methods used by the first source and then contrasting these with the second. Now these words like whereas, on the other hand, moreover, however, become very important. They're connectives, and what they're doing is they're indicating that you actually are showing a difference between the two sources. They're important to use when you transition from talking about source A to source B. As you can see, the final part of this frame for each paragraph would be, therefore, this shows the writer's contrasting feelings, thoughts, ideas of. Now, this is designed ultimately to make sure you're answering the question by going back to it and actually talking about how there is a difference between what the two people think. I hope this brief introduction to Language Paper 2 Section A was helpful. There will be one on Section B shortly, but also stay tuned for a more detailed run-through of Section A, and you will see me answer the questions live myself. Make sure to like and subscribe. I hope you enjoyed.